Hello, my name is Byron. I'm based in the United Kingdom and my work is mainly in teaching research skills to PhDs and postdocs. The title of my presentation is Creative Reflective Practice and Idea Generation. And the background to this is something that's well known in academia but not widely practiced. And this is the fact that when you take a group of people, whether this is a group of students in small group learning, or it could be an academic committee who are generating ideas. When you look at the performance of groups of people generating ideas together in the same room, it's much lower than the number of ideas that you would get if you put those people in a separate room each and had no communication between them. So this nominal group shown on the left always produces more ideas and higher quality ideas than the brainstorm group. This has been well known in research circles for many years, but it doesn't seem to have stopped the practice of brainstorm groups working together. Anyway, that's another issue, but what I want to just illustrate here is that this methodology has been used for many studies on trying to find out what causes this drop in creativity in brainstorm groups just by comparing these two. At the end of the timed session, the ideas from the nominal group are collated and any repeats only count as one. And by repeating this experiment with different people, different problems and so on, different time periods, a genuine comparison can be made between the two. And this is the common outcome that you get. This has been published in many papers. You get roughly a factor of 2 more ideas and higher quality ideas in the nominal group. And some of the individual causes of this, some factors that contribute to this drop in individual creativity are listed here. I'm not going to go into those in detail, but suffice it to say there's still ongoing research about these issues and how, in fact, you might reduce them in the group situation, and techniques have been developed to improve the performance of the brainstorm group. So this particular research interested me because I wanted to find out more about what was happening in the brainstorm situation, but also later on in the nominal group situation with regard to individual creativity. So I was interested in developing techniques for reflective practice that could be conducted in real time. And my initial work is shown here. This was published a while ago. I used this to look at the emotional engagement of individuals in nominal and brainstorm groups to compare the performance. This just shows a typical result from a brainstorm group, 4 participants, and it's based on the Yerkes-Dodson curve shown at right angles on the left. This curve is a plot of performance versus the emotional demands or the degree of emotional engagement that we have. And this curve seems to be universal. It applies to any kind of activity. And it's got 3 regions. The lowest region is low emotional engagement. In other words, where in terms of group activity, we feel excluded or frustrated or bored, not able to engage. And then there's the creative section, region 2 in the middle, where we're at our best. We approach the peak of performance. We're decisive, alert, stimulated, coming up with ideas. And then if there's any greater emotional engagement, our performance starts to drop again, and that's in region 3, and where we may become even tired after a while. Our creativity disappears first. We feel less alert and so on. And what was interesting about this was to note that well, quite apart from the fact that 4 people varied quite a lot, I did many repeats of this and saw the same kinds of patterns, but also that even after only 8 minutes, 3/4 of the group have already gone into that third zone and are not really contributing to idea generation. And a lot of this is simply due to those factors shown in that earlier slide, those group dynamic factors that influence how our creativity over time. So I've looked at this with regard to emotion, and I wanted to dig a bit deeper now and find out what was really going on with the way we were thinking to see whether that could explain this drop in performance when we work in a group. And so I looked at the idea of using attention. And I'm going to just give a very simple definition of attention, which is where our awareness is, where we are in our awareness. And we can first of all look at two different forms of attention. And to kind of simplify this, I've shown this diagram where we've got a larger character and a smaller character who are communicating together. But in this case, when our attention is outwardly directed, the larger character is, if you like, looking out into the real world, having sensual experiences, and the smaller character is a less active part of the mind that is perhaps our private thoughts or reflections, but that's not the dominant character when our attention is outwardly directed. But things are reversed when we direct our attention inwards. So here the dominant character is immersed in our imagination or our thoughts, if you like, and the lesser character is still aware of the world, but to a much reduced degree. Drawing from the language of creativity, creative problem solving, I further subdivided these forms of attention into two other modes of attention. So using divergence and convergence, and I've shown there when our attention is outwardly directed and divergent, we're scanning, passively observing, exploring, for example. But when our outward attention is convergent, then we're focusing on something. We're sensing, analyzing, making decisions, actively observing, and so on. And we can apply the same to when our attention is inwardly directed. So here we have when it's divergent inwards, this is basically imagining, visualizing, fantasizing, experiencing, daydreaming, and so on. And the opposite of that is when we're inwardly directing our attention, but it's convergent. We're thinking about something in specific. We're focusing, we're trying to remember something or analyzing and concentrating. But again, our awareness of the external world is somewhat diminished. Now, why I developed this model just based on personal observation, but also I started to, it's very easy to practice these four modes of attention. And I will say, of course, that, we do actually randomly switch from one to the other, but you can practice staying in a particular mode of attention. And creativity is really concerned with, largely, when we're looking for good ideas, new ideas, is more focused on divergent inward attention. So creativity can be nurtured through actively practicing switching between these four modes of attention and sustaining one's attention in them. And I'd just like to illustrate this, try and map the switching of attention onto the creative problem solving process. And by creative problem solving, I mean the standard three-stage process of solving problems with new ideas. What is the problem or challenge? Where are the ideas to solve it, and how do I implement the ideas? And I just want to show what could happen with regard to attention switching when we follow that creative problem solving process. So here we go. Let's use a simple problem. How could I build a better mousetrap? So the first thing we do is we study the problem, study the challenge. What do we mean by build a better mousetrap? So our attention is directed in a convergent way outward. We then make an attention switch and go to a divergent inward mode and start asking questions about that challenge. One important question would be, why do I need a better mousetrap? We then do another attention switch when we answer the question. It converges now, and the answer to that question is in order to get rid of the mice. That then leads us to a more abstracted challenge. We need abstracted challenges if we want to get great ideas. So we've now got an abstracted challenge. How might I get rid of the mice? We then make another attention switch, and then we're still inwardly directing our attention, and we start to generate ideas. We explore our imagination. We might come up with ideas like using acoustics to scare the mouse off, or we might get rid of the mice at source by covering up the hole. We may wish to find a humane way of getting rid of the mice by capturing them and letting them go somewhere else. We may hire a cat. We may give them a harmless electric shock to retrain them, and so on and so on. We come up with ideas in this divergent inward mode, And then the final attention switch is when we select the best idea, and I would suggest this is a convergent outward exercise. We've listed our ideas and we then assess them. So that's, in a nutshell, the creative problem solving process. And as you can see, it involves a fair bit of switching of attention over the short term and over the long term. And this, in a very simple way, this explains why group brainstorming is not productive in terms of idea generation, because if one person is in a divergent inward state of attention and someone else speaks, in other words, they're being convergent outward, they're going to draw that person out of that inward mode. And this is what happens. Ideas get lost because of the randomness. It's kind of attention chaos in a group, with a group of people, when speech and thought are randomly interspersed. And that really does, in my view, account for the reduced creativity in brainstorming. But I'm just going to finish now by suggesting that this could be taken further. I am considering developing an app where a student could perhaps monitor where they are in attention over a period of time when they're engaged in a problem or a challenge. And in an ideal world, the teacher may have their own template for this. It may vary from time to time, but it would be interesting for the teacher to be able to look at the student's timeline and look at their own and see potential for areas of development where perhaps a student isn't spending enough time in that divergent inward state and generating sufficient ideas. So this is a little bit speculative, but it's ideas that I'm exploring in the future. And so far, I've started to do some work on this, and a friend of mine who's an artist has written, not using a timeline, but she has written a short account, a sort of a diary of the process through which she painted. And she found she was able to relate to various stages in the process of coming up with new art. She could map them on to those attention switches. So that's it in brief. Thank you very much.